The music, lights, and a packed dance floor. It looked like any other Boxing Day night out, but somewhere in that crowd, a shadow was waiting. A plan was hidden where no one thought to look. By the time anyone realized, it was already too late. One young life was about to be cut short, all over something so small it should never have mattered. This is the story of Cody Fisher, and how a petty act of revenge turned a night of celebration into horror. Cody Fisher's life was built on quiet dedication. At 23, he was known not just as a talented footballer on the pitch, but as someone who cared deeply about those around him. Born and raised in Redditch, he spent years climbing through the youth ranks of Birmingham City's academy before going on to play for Stratford Town, Stourbridge and Bromsgrove Sporting. Coaches called him hard-working, reliable, a player who could change a game with his calm presence, but football was only part of who he was. Away from the pitch, Cody worked as a PE teacher, guiding young children with the same patience and energy he brought to training sessions. Friends described him as easygoing, never one to seek trouble, always the one to make others laugh. For his family, he was their anchor, a son and brother who never let the weight of life dull his natural warmth. Cody's mother, Tracy, often said he had a good soul, a boy who loved his family, his dog, and his football with equal passion. To his girlfriend, Jess, he was her best friend and partner. In the days leading up to Christmas 2022, Cody was in good spirits. He had spent Christmas Day with his family, laughing and eating together, before planning a casual night out with friends. There was no sense of danger on the horizon, no warning that a petty encounter 2 nights earlier would spiral into violence. Two days before Boxing Day, Cody Fisher had gone out with friends to Popworld in Solihull. The club was busy, the sort of night where the crowd moved shoulder to shoulder, weaving towards the exit. At some point, there was a brief accidental contact. Cody brushed past a man's back as he was leaving. It was the kind of moment most people would forget instantly, but not Remy Gordon. At 23, Gordon had a reputation for quick temper and bruised pride. He wasn't the type to let anything slide. Known among his circle as someone who thrived on confrontation, he was there with friends. Witnesses said he seemed to take offense, confronting Cody as if he'd been disrespected. Cody, calm but firm, saw no reason to apologize. He'd done nothing wrong. After the Christmas Eve altercation, Remy Gordon's anger didn't fade. It escalated. Within 45 minutes of leaving Popworld, he began his hunt. Using Snapchat, he shared Cody Fisher's photo with a private group, asking if anyone knew him. What started as a fleeting brush on a dance floor had become, in Gordon's mind, an insult that demanded revenge. His messages were filled with intent. He talked of disguises, referring to wearing a bally, and questioned if he could bring a weapon into the nightclub. It was not a moment of hot-headed impulse. It was a plan forming, piece by piece. He knew where Cody might be on Boxing Day, and the Crane nightclub in Digbeth became his target. The tone of his messages revealed a toxic mix of wounded pride and ego. Gordon's messages made his intentions clear, turning a trivial encounter into a hunt. Gordon's digital trail would later be a key part of the evidence, each message a breadcrumb leading back to his intent. But in those hours before Boxing Day, it was just him, his anger, and a growing determination to track Cody down. The hunt had begun, and the Crane nightclub was about to become the setting for something far darker than a night out. Boxing Day was meant to be a night of celebration. Cody Fisher, his girlfriend Jess, and a close group of friends headed to the Crane nightclub in Digbeth, Birmingham. Inside, approximately more than 1,500 people had gathered for an event headlined by DJ Marco Carola. The atmosphere should have been electric. Music, lights, and the rush of a festive crowd. But beneath it all, there was an edge. Witnesses would later describe moody groups of lads near the dance floor, some clearly not there for the music. Security at the venue was criticized as lax. Clubgoers recalled being waved through without proper searches, with one describing it as the worst security check I've ever seen. Among those in the crowd were Remy Gordon and his associate, Cammy Carpenter. Carpenter, 22, from Kings Norton, had already been drawn into Gordon's plan of retribution after the Christmas Eve altercation. CCTV would later show the pair arriving at the nightclub back-to-back. Cody and Jess had no idea they were being targeted. For them, it was just another night to enjoy the holidays. A few drinks, good music, and time together. But as the crowd moved in waves and the lights flickered across the floor, the men plotting revenge were already watching. By the time Cody Fisher stepped onto the dance floor of Crane nightclub with Jess Chatwin, his killers were already there, circling the venue with purpose. Remy Gordon arrived at Crane first. He had already been plotting for 2 days, like we discussed earlier. The security was lax, as discussed earlier. It was during this lapse that a large knife was smuggled into the nightclub. The weapon would later be found embedded in Cody's chest. Inside the club, Carpenter was seen heading to the bar at one point. CCTV showed him picking up a bottle and headed towards Gordon. He stayed in close contact with him, moving through the venue to ensure they were in position. Together, they crossed paths with Cody and Jess near the dance floor. What happened next unfolded in seconds. Carpenter, with mask, moved toward Cody. Witnesses described the first contact, a slap that knocked Cody's phone from his hand. Then came the headbutt, hard and sudden, sending Cody back as the crowd shifted around them. Gordon and the group that followed him began throwing punches and kicks, each blow designed to overwhelm Cody before he could react. One strike fractured his jaw on both sides. Jess, confused and terrified, thought they were trying to rob him. She grabbed his shoulder bag to keep it safe. But this wasn't a robbery. This was an ambush. In the chaos, Carpenter drove the knife into Cody's chest. He was also stabbed in the leg. The dance floor had erupted into chaos. People scattered, unaware of what had just happened. But Jess Chatwin knew. One moment, Cody had been standing beside her, smiling through the flashing lights, and the next, he was on the floor. She dropped to her knees and tried to move him into the recovery position. She felt the handle of the knife still lodged in his chest. Her screams drew security and staff, who tried desperately to give CPR as paramedics rushed in. But Cody's wounds were too severe. He was pronounced dead on the dance floor. Gordon and Carpenter slipped out in the confusion, their attack complete. What had started with a meaningless brush of shoulders had ended in a calculated act of murder in front of hundreds of witnesses. Later in court, Jess spoke of that moment. She remembered Cody turning to her seconds before the attack, giving her what she now calls his last smile. It was full of love and happiness, the look of someone enjoying life, unaware that death was only moments away. She described holding him as his breathing slowed, knowing he was slipping away despite everything she tried to say, every plea for him to stay. When the paramedics finally pronounced him dead, Jess felt the world go silent. Around her, the music and lights still carried on, as if nothing had happened. But for her, everything ended there. The life they had planned together, the future they talked about, all gone on that dance floor. She told the court that her life stopped that day, with the image of his final moments forever burned into her memory. The aftermath of Cody Fisher's murder saw Crane nightclub turned into a crime scene within minutes. A large number of people had been inside when the attack happened, and West Midlands police faced the immediate task of piecing together chaos. Officers locked down the venue, taking statements from witnesses who had seen the fight break out on the dance floor. CCTV from inside the club and nearby streets became one of their strongest leads. Grainy but clear enough to start with. Although the attackers had covered their faces with masks and balaclavas, the footage captured their movements, clothing, and the moments leading up to the fatal stabbing. Witnesses described them as groups of lads hanging back near the dance floor, men who were clearly not there for the music, and these accounts matched the CCTV timeline. Detective Chief Inspector Ian Ingram, leading the investigation, described those first 48 hours as a race against time. Dozens of mobile phone footage from clubgoers began to surface, capturing fragments of the attack and the panic that followed. Detectives appealed to the public, urging anyone who had filmed the incident to hand over videos, no matter how small or insignificant they might seem. Forensics examined the blood-stained dance floor, while the murder weapon, the knife that medical staff had removed from Cody's chest, was secured as evidence. Outside Crane's CCTV showed a man retrieving something from a parked car around 21:15, likely the knife, before re-entering without search, reinforcing police belief the weapon was smuggled in later. Although the blade itself wasn't directly linked via fingerprints, investigators recovered the sheath outside the Crane nightclub on Adderley Street. Forensic testing revealed DNA on that sheath matched Cammy Carpenter, confirming his possession of the murder weapon. Meantime, CCTV from inside Crane, coupled with CCTV from outside, footage of Gordon reenacting the attack at a nearby pizza shop, helped police track the suspect's movements before and after the killing. By 28th of December, the arrests began. In the early hours of the morning, officers stormed an address in Birmingham city centre where Remy Gordon was hiding. The door was forced open in a swift raid, with armed police moving in before Gordon had any chance to react or destroy evidence. He was taken into custody and transferred to the police station for questioning, while the property was searched for clothing, phones, or any trace linking him to the Crane nightclub attack. During questioning, Gordon's seized phone provided the breakthrough investigators needed. Digital forensics uncovered a series of Snapchat messages that we already discussed earlier in this video. This digital trail placed Gordon at the center of the plot and confirmed the attack had been planned rather than spontaneous. Carpenter was found hiding in London and taken into custody after booking a last-minute flight to Jamaica, snagged just hours before departure. A third man, 19-year-old Regan Anderson, was also arrested in London and later charged with affray. Police revealed that Gordon had been planning to flee the UK for Jamaica, but his attempts to leave were thwarted by the rapid pace of the investigation. In total, 7 people were arrested, 3 on suspicion of murder and 4 others on suspicion of assisting an offender. The speed of the police response was critical. Within days, they had built a timeline of events from the start to conclude the investigation with arrests. The hunt for Cody's killers was over, but the fight for justice had only just begun. But before the trial began, Cody's death had already sparked wider conversations about knife crime, nightclub safety, and the legacy he left behind. The aftermath of Cody Fisher's murder reignited calls for tougher penalties for carrying knives. His mother, Tracy, publicly condemned the weak, pathetic cowards who choose to carry weapons, and demanded harsher sentences to prevent more lives being taken. The Crane nightclub's license was suspended after the attack, with its security measures heavily criticized and events immediately cancelled. Tributes poured in from football clubs, including Stratford Town and Bromsgrove Sporting, remembering Cody as a talented player and a kind-hearted young man who inspired those around him. Cody's legacy is more than his tragic death. He is remembered for his promise, his kindness, and the lives he touched. Even after the verdicts, the family's pain remained raw, and the wider conversation about knife crime grew louder. Tracy Fisher, his mother, spoke of a grief so deep it felt like her own life had ended the moment Cody's was taken. She described it as though she too had been stabbed straight through the heart, living each day in the shadow of her son's absence. The pain, she said, was a life sentence, one that would never end. Tracy revealed that she still cannot bring herself to enter Cody's bedroom, a place once filled with laughter and football gear. Since this horrendous day, I have gone from the happiest, outgoing person to simply fighting to survive each day, she told the court. Her words carried a plea for change, harsher penalties for those who carry knives, and justice that truly reflects the devastation caused by senseless violence. Jess Chatwin, Cody's girlfriend, gave a statement that left many in tears, which we already discussed earlier. The trial began at Birmingham Crown Court in early 2024, a 10-week hearing that pulled apart every detail of the Boxing Day murder. Prosecutor Michael Duck Casey laid out the case with a timeline from the very starting point of heated arguments on Christmas Eve to a calculated act of revenge. Jurors heard Gordon's Snapchat messages about weapons with disguises, video evidence, and witness testimony placed both Gordon and Kami Carpenter at the scene during the fatal attack. The prosecution argued that while Carpenter delivered the fatal stab wound, Gordon was the orchestrator, the man who planned and drove the entire ambush. Messages sent within 45 minutes of the Popworld incident were highlighted in court, showing Gordon's fixation on finding Cody. Mobile phone data and CCTV from a nearby pizza shop where Gordon was seen mocking the attack added to the evidence. The defense argued that the incident was not a premeditated attack, but rather a confrontation that escalated on the dance floor. But the jury dismissed these claims. As the judge read his remarks, he described Cody Fisher as an innocent young man whose life had been taken over a petty and avoidable incident. When the verdict was delivered, the courtroom was silent. Remy Gordon, 23, was convicted of murder and affray. The judge described him as essentially the leader, someone who allowed a trivial incident to spiral into deadly violence. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 26 years. Kami Carpenter, 22, was also found guilty of murder. The judge concluded that he had delivered the fatal blow, pointing out that the stabbing was carried out with his left hand. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. Regan Anderson, 19, who was present during the attack, was cleared of murder and manslaughter, but convicted of affray. He received 18 months in prison, but having already served this time while awaiting trial, he was released on license. The other 4 individuals arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender were released on bail as investigations continued, but none were ultimately charged with murder. What are your thoughts on this case and the sentences handed down to Gordon and Carpenter? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more real UK crime stories like this, subscribe, turn on notifications, and let us know which cases you'd like to see next.